Shane, we're back. Another Manic and Chill. It is Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025. Shane, my friend, it's our third Manic and Chill on DD Fantasy. If you haven't already, look at the bottom banner, like, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Destination Devi, DDFFB on YouTube. Lots of content coming out every single week. Shane, before I get into the topic, how you feeling? It's been a couple weeks since the fantasy season ended. I know you were sweating a little bit because your Eagles are in the semifinal game. They're hosting the NFC Championship game against Clay's Commanders of all teams, against a team that probably shouldn't be there. It was probably not the team you expected they were going to play if they made it to the NFC Championship game. But all the pressure is on the Eagles, and yet you are convinced they are going to get absolutely crushed. Thoughts, my friend? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm just doing that to
cope with the incoming pain.
I'm from Philadelphia, right? So we're used to losing. Philadelphia, I keep sharing this. I am 46 years old. There have been 4 championships in my lifetime, 2 of which I can actually recall because the other 2 were in the 80s. So there was one in like 81 and one in like 83, baseball, and then the Sixers. After that, absolutely nothing until 2007, and then nothing until 2017. So we're used to losing, and that's a lot of finals. NFC championships. People in Kansas City might not know Andy Reid was a big fat loser here. He was the Buffalo Bills of NFC championships, just continually losing them year after year after year at home. So look, you got to get ready for your heartache. Now, hopefully they win, right? They go to Super Bowl, beat Kansas City, and right that wrong. But yeah, I'm nervous, a little nervous. Look, Jaden Daniels is a superstar, right? Like, yeah,
that's the issue. Is it's hard to root against Jaden Daniels. If this was the Lions, you could easily root against them. If this was the Rams, who have already won a title, you could root against them. You can easily root against anybody not named probably Jaden Daniels in the NFC. You could justify not rooting for. But I know you love the guy. So
no matter who it was, if it's Philadelphia, the other team is the team who America's going to like. Nobody wants Philadelphia to do well. There's many reasons
Dallas
for that. Maybe Dallas.
I think if it's Dallas, it would be kind of like both fan bases hate the other, but I don't know if anybody really would root for the other. You know what I mean? Like people aren't out there rallying. Believe it or not, there's not a lot of people that really even care for the Ravens or the Bills. Those are polarizing teams, but they have quarterbacks that haven't won, and everybody hates the Chiefs. So it's like anybody but the Chiefs. But there's been many times in my life where maybe it's me being a Bengals fan, and pretty much everybody in or around where I'm at, because I'm in Columbus, and everybody either is a Bengals fan, a Browns fan, or a Steelers fan. So guess who nobody likes? The Ravens. But it's like everybody rooted for the Ravens when they're facing the Chiefs last year. And if it was the Ravens versus the Chiefs, everybody would be Ravens fans. So I don't know, man.
I think this is more apt, right? Because everyone's tired of the Chiefs winning, but most people hate Philadelphians, don't like Nick Sirianni, and have a weird fetish with hating Jalen Hurts. Like it's almost a given. So, and in fairness, some of our fans aren't the best. You saw the dude that lost his job.
That goes with the territory, I think. I mean, if Philly fans get a bad rap, there are some bad ones, but remember the Ravens Commanders game this year, the guy that got arrested for putting the guy in the coma. You remember that? The Ravens fan that went viral on social media for
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's those types in every fan base. So
but also our mayor doesn't know how to spell Eagles, which is
that's
disconcerting.
That's bad. And honestly, the funny thing is I don't empathize with you. I know that you are a Philly guy through and through. I know you get into the Phillies when they're good, the Sixers when they're good, but look at the background. I'm a Cincy fan. Can you name the last time a Cincinnati team won a title, Shane?
The Cincinnati River Rats of the AHL in 1965. No, the Reds. You had the big red machine, and then you had the Reds in the 90s with Eric Davis.
They won one title in 1990. Now that's just the Reds. Okay. That's just Cincinnati, right? Now you add into the fact that a lot of people in Ohio claim Cleveland. Can you name, other than the LeBron James return, which yes, they did win a championship, but here's the thing. Half the people hated him still when he won that championship. There are people that don't call that a real Cleveland championship because it was, let's face it, it was kind of bought and paid for, manufactured, right. You could say, right? Like the real fans are either the Guardians / Indians or Browns. And both of those fan bases are just as tortured as, so you're looking at people that are like, I'll take one title ever. You know what I mean? Every other thing has basically been losses, but
no, I don't want one. I need more. All right. I enjoyed them too much, and I like the parades, and more importantly, I like the days off from work. So anyway, no one wants to hear about me and my pain of the Eagles being in the NFC Championship. Weirdo. What a freaking weirdo.
Well, and I've started to antagonize you, like you and Clay, because your teams are facing each other, and like we love Clay, but Clay doesn't react or take it as hard as you. He's like, he's playing with found money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even if the Commanders lose, he'll be like, oh, not, he's at the point with the Commanders where this is a nice season. It was fun. He can be super excited for the offseason and the draft and next year and the year after. Whereas, if Philly would have lost that game to the Rams, even if they lose to the Commanders at home, it's going to be just, everybody hates each other. The team is falling apart. We need to fire the coach because he can't get any further than he did 2 years ago. So it's like, it's Super Bowl or bust, but it's good to have those expectations. So
exactly. But hey, we're happy to be here together. Real quick, Vapad, what up, brother? Hey, Shane, what's the topic? Are you covering trades? One, we'll get to the topic. Two, when do we not cover trades, right? Like, first of all, like, remember, old school or like legit best ball leagues where you can't trade? Like that would absolutely kill me. Like if you made me join one of those, I would shrivel up and die. But yeah, trades are on the table. Let's go.
Yeah, hit the chat with anybody you want to call out, but literally just in typical Manic and Chill fashion, I put this topic up there and literally within 2 seconds, Shane covered it with the question, what is the topic? But it is what to do now in your Dynasty League. And that could be Dynasty Leagues. It can be a portfolio. It can really be very broad. And we have some topics that we actually organized for this week, but put them in the chat. If you have trade questions, if you have things that you want us to talk about, we'll certainly hit those. But what to do now in your Dynasty League? I have a couple things I want to specify, but just broadly speaking, Shane, it's kind of a dead period. A lot of my leagues are dead. Most of my leagues, I think all, but I think my only sleeper league that's not rolled over is the damn DGT Invitational. And I look at that every day and I'm like, dude, what are we waiting for? Like that's
what we're waiting for. I'm not going to put any of the famous people in that league on blast, but they haven't gotten around to pay for the dues. Now,
okay, but they can't afford I have other leagues that are not paid. Well, but the league has been rolled over. So just roll the league over and we can still collect the dues. But anyway, what are you doing right now? You have a bunch of leagues. A lot of them are just sitting there. Yes, there's some chatter. There's maybe a random trade or two that goes through. There's a lot of people spamming players on trade blocks, players cutting some dead weight. I do have waivers on in most of our leagues. So there is at least, an opportunity to look at waivers every once in a while if you won't, even though I missed a bunch of them this week. But what are you doing? Like you wake up, you have 15 minutes before you go to work. Like, what are you doing? Mostly for you, it's probably before you go to bed. What are you doing? What are you trying to do? And then don't pick any of the things we already have as the target topics, but broadly speaking.
Oh, I legitimately don't know what the topics are. And I don't think that's a shock to you or anyone else.
Perfect.
First of all, the emptiness that I feel in the morning, I can't even explain. I feel like with being in 35 leagues, right? It feels like during the season, every morning you wake up to at least 2 or 3 trade offers.
Yes.
I feel it between that and the waivers going through and the Thursday morning emails from the ancient MFL leagues I'm in reminding me to submit a lineup. Because it won't just carry over the ones like Sleeper does correctly.
Injury drama.
Injuries. There's always something to do. Now I wake up and I stare at the ceiling. I I look at my phone and there's nothing. There's no movement. There's very little movement. And then when I do see a trade offer, it's usually pretty bad. It's like a Larry Monkey deal. Just not good. That's just code for a bad trade offer. I'm trying to stop myself from making boredom trades because it's 8 months until the season. It's 4 months until we have rookie drafts. That's the first thing that's even going to be in place. So I'm just basically trying to stop myself from making any unnecessary moves, right? Like I look at certain players and I go, oh, I'd really like to add more of this, but I don't feel, or at least I'm stopping myself so far. I feel like I'm all proud of myself. It's been 3 weeks. I've stopped myself from just going, all right, you know what today is? Today is the BTJ shopping spree. Tomorrow, that's the Puka shopping spree. Wednesday, that's going to be the Malik day, where you just go out and plaster every league you're with for offers for those players where you don't have them, despite the fact that you probably shouldn't be consolidating and things like that in some of those leagues.
Yeah, good comment from Average Football Fathers. Right now, I have to restrain myself from trading just to trade without actually having an objective. And even if your objective is, I want to get more Brian Thomas Jr., that's kind of a loose objective, and probably the reason that you want that is because there's not a lot of other things you want. So you're like, let me find a reason to go out and send out offers that I may or may not regret to get him without really, again, an objective. You know what I mean? Like, why are you buying him? And that's going to lead into the first topic. And if you have any other comments with things that have come to your mind, I'll put those in here. But here's the first one that I thought of when I got this topic. And I think there's probably a bunch of different things you can do, but for me, this is number one. What to do now in your Dynasty League, it is this. Roster construction. Where are you headed? What can you fix? Focus on small moves. So what I mean by this, Shane, is I don't necessarily have to go in and look at all of my first round picks and what players I need to tier up or what players I need to sell. This is mostly like just the overall formation of my team. What are the really small things that I can do and not even blink that would accomplish something? But if it doesn't get done, it's just something that I probably have to put off to do later, or it's something that I have to try at a different time when it's more active. But it leads to what we talked about, I think a couple weeks ago, but maybe even last week, with all of those rookie receivers that were not high draft picks. What's the purpose for them on your team? Like, if you just put some basic roster construction 101 principles in there, like, they don't count as probably one of your receivers that you're counting on flexing or starting. Now, they could be, right? They could be an asset that could turn into that. But if you have some of these guys on your roster, what is the move? You know, like, is there a quick Javon Baker for any running back on a 53 trade that I can make? Like, little things like that where I don't have to really do any research. I just go through and I see that they're on my team and I just start sending out offers that the objective is to get rid of him. You know what I mean? Like, I can send out 50 trades that look like that. That can include tacking on a fourth with a player like that to get a third. That can include trading one of those types for a backup quarterback. Shout out to last week where you got a bunch of shit for wanting to trade for Will Levis. This would be the type of move where you would get Will Levis with, right? You'd tack a fourth onto Malachi Corley for Will Levis, and you just hope somebody sends them to you for no. Like, that is the type of trade that most people would not be impressed with. You post that in our Discord or on Twitter, no one's going to give a shit, so we don't. But those are the types of trades where you look back and you go, okay, how did you get your construction to a place that you wanted? You know, how did you get 12 backup quarterbacks? How did you get some of these backup running backs that nobody valued in January, but they might value in August? How did you get them for so cheap? And it's because you mindlessly did deals like that before anybody really saw it coming. So that's my first one. Just roster construction basics. I know that's a passion of mine, but yeah. Any thoughts on this? Because this I would say takes some discipline. Because it is hard to get excited about looking for these types of players on your roster. You're like, oh, it doesn't matter. I'll just cut that guy later if I don't have room for him. But sometimes these moves can pay off.
No, so I And I think this conversation was actually born out of the morning drive. So if you're not a DD Fantasy member, go ahead and sign up now and use our promo code Manic and Chill. And hopefully the description's in the the link's in the description. Use that code.
It isn't this week, but I will make sure it gets in there.
Right.
That's my
so I remember, as soon as I was done, got to the office. Obviously I worked until 5 o'clock. And then what I did is I went online and said, all right, where do I have Roman Wilson? Where do I have Javon Baker? Where do I have who's Javon Baker? Jermaine Burton, etc. It doesn't matter.
Javon Bitten, Jermaine Burton, that one.
Jamon Bitten,
Javon Baker, Javon Burton, Jermaine Baker, one of those guys.
Literally all these dudes. Like it does not matter. And I sent out a bunch of offers for Will Levis, for Daniel Jones, for who else? I think Malik Willis, just literally all the backup quarterbacks. But I was a little more targeted. I did try to get backup quarterbacks that I think could have starts in their future. Now, whether they're ever a full-time starter again, probably not. But there's definitely a universe where Daniel Jones is going to get multiple starts and, during the rest of his career, because he's not bad enough that you wouldn't start him if your starting quarterback went down. Same with Will Levis. Well, he might be, but Will Levis, like maybe he sits on a bench somewhere for 3 years and learns how to play football and he gets back in there. And if he doesn't, I gave up Roman Wilson, who played one game last year and scored 0 fantasy points in that. Or I gave up Jalen Polk, who averaged, I don't know, it doesn't matter. Or I gave up even Adonai Mitchell, right? 3.2 fantasy points per game. Does that do anything for you? Now, Adonai Mitchell is probably a player that has a little more cachet. So, maybe you should use him in a bigger deal. Maybe you could use him for, I don't know, you really try to get a really good quarterback in comparison, like a Geno Smith, go crazy, add something to Adonai, AD Mitchell, whatever. But I love that deal. I will say it is hard to stay motivated to do it, because after you do it like in 6 leagues, because, you're sending out, I don't know, 5 to 6 offers in each of those leagues. It's like, oh, this is kind of a slog. I've got 27 more leagues to get through just to do this exercise. So I did fall off after a few of the leagues. And actually, while you were talking about it, I just went on the Dynasty Daddy, pulled out my fantasy portfolio. I'm going to get back to work, And one of the things I'm going to do too is I'm going to filter it or sort it by lowest to highest, right? Because my lowest, there's all these like one-off guys. I'm just going to try to get rid of them. So I don't even have to think about them. Not bad, not good players. Good players, it's different. You know what I mean? But
dude, we're so alike with that. Like I'm looking at so I track all my ownership or rostership of players on a spreadsheet. Dynasty Daddy's good, but you have to every once in a while load the leagues, and it can be a little cumbersome. So I have my own just as a backup. But you don't know how good it feels when you have one share of a player, and then you get rid of it, and you can just kind of like wipe. I mean, for me, I can literally remove the player from the spreadsheet because they're not there anymore. But yeah, it's that's definitely something that has been good over the years, to just cut one share left of a player and say, you know what, I don't have any more of that player. But I think, to your point, these are moves that you have to kind of budget in time, and it's perfect currently in the off season to do this. You know what I mean? You have an extra 5 to 10 minutes. Just pick a league, go through and go, oh yeah, sending out this player for this. It doesn't even matter the player you're trying to get back, and don't get too greedy. Like you even started to say, I'm a little more selective. I'm not, unless it is a player that has value. Now you mentioned like AD Mitchell and Roman Wilson.
No. AD Mitchell still has a little bit of value compared to Roman Wilson. Right.
I think the point is filling gaps where, as soon as everybody's paying attention, you have to do something to get somebody to go, okay, yeah, this deal makes sense. Like there probably has to be a method to it, and you have to spray as many trade offers as you can get. You probably can't just get it done in 1 or 2. You have to say, okay, the bet that I'm making is Malachi Corley will never be relevant. He'll never be somebody I can use. And if there's one of these players that you move and ends up being better than expected, then that's just the price of doing business. But for the most part, like this is how you build up the backup QBs. This is how you build up the backup running backs. It's not waiting until it's obvious to do it. You know what I mean? It's not waiting, because a lot of my leagues, I've noticed a lot more people are rostering every quarterback and every running back. They don't cut them like they used to. You know what I mean? Like they're still holding on to guys where I'm like, yeah, Jeff Wilson, for instance, is still rostered in half my leagues. Now, he's probably very far removed from being a running back that you could start. But before, people would just go in and cut him in the offseason. And now it's like, yeah, you know what? I can see a reason why I would hold on to a player like that. So, Any comments you want to throw in from the chat? I've seen a couple good ones come through.
Yeah, there actually are some really good ones. Let me go to the starred ones, right? All right, well, let's just start from the top, right? No particular order. I don't want anyone to think that I'm playing favorites. Good evening, good people. What up, Kevin Cunningham? Regarding the talk on 26 first versus 27 firsts, I made a deal in a shallow league last summer. Traded my first contending in 2026 for a then tankers 2027 first. Thought at the time was not only the hype on. Okay, I probably should have gotten the rest of Kevin's comment. Apparently, this was a two-parter.
I leave the comments to Shane, and the first one he stars.
In fairness to me,
the second.
Oh, here it is. I thought then Jeremiah Smith being on an all-time rated recruit, but also looking at consensus rankings for the 27 class, there were around 12 of the top 100 players being wide receivers. Is that potential soft spot that, my goodness, Kevin, people don't look at, as if this class in particular is loaded at wide receiver, for example, and therefore guessing what the hype on a particular class, this being 2027, might be. I am going to try to clean this up a little.
Tap into your AI brain and summarize those 3 messages in about 6 seconds, Shane.
He moved to 26 first last year for 27 first because he feels the 27 class is better. It's more hyped. Yep. And that the 27 class will have more wide receivers in the top 100 than, what do you call those people? Other positions, obviously. Do we think this is a soft spot? Do we believe that this is a soft spot that other people aren't capitalizing on?
Well, we have a running joke on DTI 5 over the last 2 weeks about just Jeremiah Smith, every 27 pick being Jeremiah Smith. But I think the key part about Kevin's comment is you traded a pick for a good team, right? A contender for what you think is a bad team's 27 first. You could stop right there. It could have been a 25 first. It could have been a 26 first. Could have been your 27 first and something else to get a better pick. The idea and what he did here was he traded, basically betting against another manager, right? Like, I'm going to outmaneuver and outmanage, and my team's going to be better than yours. I'm betting on your team being bad. That's it. Whether Jeremiah Smith ends up even being in the 27 class, that's the funny thing that people just assume is they know he's going to be the 101 in 2027. We think he is. But what happens, Shane, if he gets some contract where you're like, well, maybe he stays back another year? What if he gets injured? We're just assuming he is the 101. Now, the biggest key to Kevin's trade is that other people are going to think that way.
Yes.
I'm not trading for that pick so that I can wait until the 101 of my rookie draft on May 6th, 2027 and hit draft on Jeremiah Smith. There's probably going to be a lot of windows during that time where I'm going to look at my league and I'm going to say, hey, dude, that is going to be the 2027 101 because look at whose pick it is. It's this team that's finished last place the last 2 years. I have their 27 first, and that's going to be Jeremiah Smith, and he's already wide receiver 3 in Dynasty, hypothetically speaking, like a year down the road. That's when I have an asset that I have a lot of outs, and that's why you do that trade. Because your first is going to be a late first. The league probably perceives it to be a late first. That's why you do it. You don't do it for one single player or for one single position. So that's my thoughts.
Right. So I will say this. He did not just focus on Jeremiah Smith, right? He did say the class.
The class,
he
yes.
did say the class is going to be
for the class.
Obviously Jeremiah Smith is the crown jewel that, all 12 teams are going to get. And if you're in a 14-team league, all 14 teams are going to get them. If you're in a 32-team, 2-copy league, you might get, well, let's see, what would that be? There would be like 116 Jeremiah Smiths. I don't know how many there would be, but not everyone's going to get them. But he did note that he thinks 27 class is going to be much more hyped than 27. I think 26 is as far as I want to go out, to be honest with you. Now I'll take 27 first, obviously, but even now, like when I'm talking about trading for picks, I generally want the 26 first as opposed to the 25 first, depending on the range, of course. I'm not going to pass up the 101 in 2025 for a rando 2026 first.
It's just an investment. That's how you have to think of it. It's a smart move. I think a lot of people, again, this is one of those things that takes discipline. And let me just say this before we go any further on this topic tonight. A lot of these things take a little time, right? To find that trade that he pulled off, you got to take a couple minutes to look at the other teams, right? You have to take a couple minutes to figure out what are teams are you're comfortable making that type of deal on. And then you have to send those out. It's very tough for us that are in a lot of leagues to drill down to those details. Like that's one of the downfalls of having 30 plus leagues is there's no way we can micromanage each team to the degree where all of those types of trades are getting sent out 24/7, unless I'm literally on my phone all the time.
Okay. Well, that's what I was going to say. So you
it's
have
possible,
to have, you have to have a level.
be,
you have to have a level of
grind.
OCD, right? So you have to go, all right, well, it's Monday. And it's easier to do in the off season because you don't have all these other things distracting you. But it's Monday. Today, I'm going through these 5 leagues. Tuesday, I'm going through these 5 leagues. Wednesday, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it just so happens there's 7 days in the week. So that's perfect to be in 35 leagues. So you could get through 35 leagues a week if you wanted to. You can find the time if you truly want to. Like you're watching Doctor Who, right? You're watching 3 Doctor Who episodes in a row. You know how many times you've actually looked up and watched to see what's happening? Maybe 3 times when the music got loud. You're like, oh, something's happening. Oh, Doctor Who died? Wow, I didn't expect that. I didn't see that coming. But yeah, most of the time I'm just playing on my phone.
Yeah, unless you find one of these shows that I've been watching Killing Eve lately. I don't know if you've watched that, but it's one of those you get into it and you're like, damn, I'm actually not focusing on my phone. So sometimes you find those shows.
I know. I joke. I can tell you every episode that I've seen because my brain can do the 2 things at once. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
You're special.
I've heard that many times.
Yeah, for different things. So I have another one that this was one of Shane's topics. So I'm going to throw this up here for you. Target topic number 2, identify players that are candidates to split or liquidate. I threw the liquidate part in there because I think both apply. Going about crafting deals to send out, including those players. So this was yours. This is something you texted me that you wanted to talk about. This is probably, it takes a little more research than what we were just talking about. You're not mindlessly sending out 30, 40 trade offers with just, roster clogger receiver for a running back or roster clogger receiver for a quarterback. You probably have to do a little digging on how you feel about certain players. So talk about this one. What do you mean when you put this out there?
So, I mean, it's great having 16 Malik Neighbors, 15 Brian Thomas Jr.'s. Like, it's really fun looking at your rostership when you're like, dude, I got 50% of this dude. But the rest of your roster might be ass, or not even ass, but not good enough to actually compete. And you might be better served instead of having that pretty shiny rostership number at 40%. You might be better served saying, all right, what can Brian Thomas Jr. really do for me, though? I love Brian Thomas Jr. That's great. But this team doesn't have a legitimate QB2. It also doesn't have a legitimate tight end. And my 3rd wide receiver is Amari Cooper. Like that's a team that's not going to compete. And you need to be honest with yourself. And if you don't have the assets, right? I'm speaking specifically, like say you just have your own first this year, your own first next year. I know a lot of us have leagues where we have 5 or 6 firsts in this draft, 4, et cetera. But there are a lot of people also that just don't have picks like that. They just have their regular picks. You're probably not going to be able to rebuild that roster or compete with that roster as is, unless you, again, take a hard look. What can I do with BTJ? What can I do with Malik Neighbors? What can I do with Justin Jefferson? What can I get for them at the high end level? Like you said, I'm not just taking clock. And you do walk a fine line, right? Because you want multiple assets, but you don't want Terry McLaurin, the 110, and another Terry McLaurin for Justin Jefferson, because that's really not going to serve the purpose that you want of retooling this team. So it is a fine line. There is a fine line, I should say. It's not is a fine line. There is a thin line, fine line. of what you need to do to try to fix that roster, of the deal that you need to construct to get the return on that player. And the beautiful thing about that is there's generally not a rush to move that player, right? So if you do not get the deal that you like, that's the important part, right? In my olden days, I would go, here's the deals that I'm sending out. Everyone rejected them. I'm going to lower the market on myself because I don't know why. There's no rush. If it's Malik Neighbors, pretty good chance nothing's going to happen between now and September to change his value, to decrease his value. Sure, there could be a Rashee Rice episode, but you know what I mean? That's so far out of left field. So if you don't get close to the most perfect deal that you want, hold on them until, the season. And if you have to, through next year, you know what I mean? Like, again, if this is a team that isn't going to compete next year, as much as I'd like to make the deal now, I can wait as long as possible till I get the deal that I like.
Yeah, I think this is a busy topic because there's a lot of different things you could probably do. But I think the first thing is identifying those rosters where you're interested in this type of deal, which should probably, even if you're saying I have 40% Malik Neighbors, there's probably only one or two teams where you're like, I have to move them for two pieces. I have to make this deal. So really focus on those. But I think the second thing is, that's why I put out in all caps. You need to send out the offer, not for exact. And here's where you have to be a little flexible and agnostic with the type of players that you get back, right? You can't just say, I have to turn Malik Neighbors into Rashee Rice. I have to turn him into the 101. Like, you have to get a little flexible, but send out the form of the deal that you want. Don't settle for a 4-for-1. I don't want a 4-for-1. I want a 2-for-1 where I'm splitting Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas or whatever it is into two assets. I don't want 4. I don't want 2 seconds kicked in as a sweetener. I want 2 pieces. Now, they don't have to both be equal. They don't have to be worth each this much. They don't even have to be this position or a draft pick. But it has to be the type of deal that you want. And I think a lot of people make the mistake. The worst thing you can do is just put Brian Thomas Jr. on the trade block. You're not going to get you have a specific reason as to why you're clicking Brian Thomas Jr. trade block, right? But you're not telling the league the type of trade that you want. You're just saying he's on the trade block. So that's when you're going to get an offer of the 112 and a 27-second and Cortland Sutton and a running back. And you're going to go, oh, I'm trading you 4P. Like, it's not the type of deal that you want. Then you're going to get upset at that manager for sending you a deal that doesn't make sense. And you're going to say something, because I've done this. I respond back with, yeah, that's probably not the form of the deal that I'm looking for. But then I never told the person, or I never told the league the type of form of deal I'm looking for, right? So just put it out there. Like, you either send out the offer and I'm trying to split this piece into 2 assets, and just put it in the chat. Hey, I'm looking to sell Malik Neighbors. I want 2 assets. You pick what they are. Like, you can come to me with this player and this pick, and if I don't like those, then I'll decline it. But at least I'm not going to get tilted because you sent me a 5-for-1 in a start 10 league that it doesn't make sense to even make that type of deal. So put it out there. Like, tell people what your objective is, and maybe you'll actually get a few offers incoming that maybe could fit what you're looking for. But most of the time, you have to send those out. You have to send the deal out in the form that you want. Otherwise, you're just going to get frustrated with trying to make some of these big moves that you're talking about. You want to touch on liquidating real quick, because that, I think, can be a little more liberal. You don't have to be as picky. Like, the goal, and I'll even, this is why I use the auto accept trade block. I'm just telling you that I'm trying to trade Calvin Ridley, and this is generally what I want. You know what I mean? Like, I'll just tell you, people are usually afraid to put a player on the trade block and say what they want, because then they're fearful that they're not going to get a little more. They're not going to get the type of deal they want. But be honest, like, if you're trying to liquidate and your goal is to just get rid of this player because you don't believe in him or you don't want him anymore, put out there what it's going to cost. Let the free market determine if they will pay that price. What do you think? Liquidation?
No, yeah. I mean, it is liberating, right? It's my team is so bad that I will take sorry about that. Trade alert. My team is so bad that I will take a 25 first and two, I don't want to say random, but 226 first because my team's just that bad. I need to do it. Now, to your point with the Calvin Ridley one, I love that, right? Because we're scared to put what we want to receive because we think that there's going to be some secret offer that comes out of the blue that would exceed that if we don't tell people exactly what we want. Like, oh, if I don't tell everyone that I want at least a 205 or better for Calvin Ridley, maybe someone will give me a first. It's not going to happen. So you are better off just putting it out there. Like, this is what I want, and that was the point of the auto trade block, right? Is just you put it out there. It's a little different on Sleeper, except that it's also fun because it pings everyone every time you do it, as opposed to MFL. Literally pings every time you do it. And every time someone does that, just in general, every time I see a ping for a player going on the block or their nickname changing, I at least go to see if like that deal makes sense for me. I forget what I was talking about before.
Well, no, but I think to the auto accept trade block, like how many times do you see players that end up on the team list or the trade block, but there is no price? Like, how likely are you? I might even want to buy some Deontay Johnson or Amari Cooper or something like that if the price is a third.
Yeah.
But if you just put them on the trade block, those are not the type of players that I'm going to cold offer to you without knowing what you would accept. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I probably just won't do that, even though I think that's probably a fair price. But if you just put in there, hey, I'll take any third, that lets me decide if I want to send the offer. And some of the most successful players I've seen, they will just put the price out there because the deal usually is not big enough to where if they don't get better than what's in their mind, they're going to lose sleep over it. You don't put Malik Neighbors on the trade block with an auto accept price because it's way too subjective what that looks like. You know what I mean? You don't just say 2 firsts because somebody's going to get cute and send you the 112 and a 27 first. And you're going to go, that's not what I wanted, but you put that out there. But if you're talking like middle tier, lower tier assets, like a Calvin Ridley type, if you just say any second in 26 or 27 or something like that, it's either I want to buy it or I don't. There's no negotiation. You either get the offer or you don't, but you have to be the one that puts it out there.
So. And one of those things is a clear diamond, and the other is a cloudy one that you get at those discount diamond stores where you can buy a bag of them for $75. I don't think they're probably good diamonds.
Yep. Hit a couple questions here before we get to the next topic. Mark, he did not specify anything other than a 12-team start 13. So it's a start 13, Shane. Are you taking Neighbors and Stroud or Jaden Daniels? I think start 13, you're taking the package pretty easy, right? That's the dream. That because what are the odds you even ever split a good asset for something that powerful? Never.
Not for a wide receiver one, an elite wide receiver one, not even back end, and then Stroud.
Shit, you'd be then splitting Stroud, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Or you want to buy Stroud, don't you?
Yeah, I do want more Stroud in my life.
But would you split him again here if you could get another like
in a 12 by 13?
Garrett Wilson and a T-Law or Dak or something? You just do it again, right? Because you're getting another starter.
I'd split him for any of those dudes in a pick. To be honest with you, because 12 by 13 depth is something that I'd actually care about.
All 22 FF, shout out my friend. He said sell high on Jalen McMillan. We talked Jalen McMillan a lot last week on the show. Real quick, like, is he a guy you would put auto accept trade block for a second?
Yes.
Or do you think there's a better window?
There could be a window if Godwin departs. But what happens that
dude, he is the biggest riser on KTC still. He is now wide receiver 31. And I will bet you, I said it last week, I will bet you give it another couple weeks. If there's any word on, what Godwin is going to do, like he's going to pass the likes of Jaden Reed, DK Metcalf, Brandon Ayuk, maybe even Terry McLaurin. Like he can get right up there with the J-Mo's, George Pickens, especially if people think he's going to be the wide receiver too, man. If they keep Liam Cohen and there's a world where he's the wide receiver too, I mean,
it sounds like you've got a little more ceiling to go there, right? And he continues to climb. So that's what I like.
Now, what if Godwin re-ups and Liam Cohen leaves? Then you're like, I would have rather taken this. I mean, he's the perfect player that if you want to hedge your bets,
you move
sell a couple, right? Sell a couple for a second and a third if you can get it, but don't completely get rid of him because you know what's going to happen. I think that's how I would treat Jalen McMillan specifically. Oh, let's see. There's one others I wanted to put in here.
Yeah, super chat. So I'm gonna make sure.
Oh yeah, throw the super chats in there. Jake Summit, 12 by 10, Superflex, Stroud, Penix, Bijan, Kyron, James Cook, Puka, Rashee Rice, Smitty, Mike Evans traded JSN, Brian Robinson, and the 104. I assume that's Brian Robinson for Wilson, JJ McCarthy, and the 110. I assume that's Garrett. I think he might have specified, but not positive. Thoughts on this
Russell.
Trade?
That's
it's not. It's probably not Russell because he has 2 quarterbacks already, and he acquired McCarthy. But what do you think here? I don't love it. Let's say it's Garrett Wilson. Can you kind of just wash Garrett Wilson and JSN? Are you fine with that?
You can, but then I still want B Rob in the 104 more than I do JJ McCarthy in the 110.
That's what I was going to say, is break it down from really the 104 is the asset in that deal that you probably didn't want to trade for another quarterback when you already have Stroud and Penix. Like, I probably wouldn't have paid that asset for my QB3.
Right.
But I don't know. What else can we do with the 110? That's probably what this comes down to. If you could flip the 110 for a future first.
27, sure.
Then I traded Brian Robinson for essentially a future first, and I'm okay with doing that. So I think the deal needs another deal to make it complete. It
was Garrett Wilson.
Oh, cool.
Okay, and then this kind of changes the whole deal. It's the 106 instead of the 104.
And I mean, how much does that change it?
It's still not going to change it a lot for me. I still want the JSN side, which again is just mind-boggling to me that I'm saying those words out of my mouth on purpose. But this is where we are in life. Just real quick, Liam Cullen did staying with Tampa. Tampa.
Well, okay, but
and he signed an extension.
I guess the thing would be: is there a world where he goes back on that and ends up taking the Raiders job? I don't know. But that's that. I mean, if we think he's staying in Tampa, then you're making your bet based on that until you change otherwise. I think the point is look at all the information and say, I'm betting on this outcome, and that's how I'm going to treat this Jalen McMillan share in this league. You know what I mean? And it can hedge. You can take both outcomes and say it's possible. Godwin stays, and maybe I should have sold the McMillan. But think about those things and just go in that direction, especially if you have a lot of exposure to a player like that. There was one more I wanted to put up here before we get to the next topic. That was this hot take from Stro1439. Just sell high on BTJ. All his production came with no Ingram or no Kirk.
Targets are earned. I don't care who you're on the field with, right? Those targets didn't branch. That's not the word I'm looking for, but they weren't all scattered. BTJ monopolized them, regardless if they were playing or not. Targets are earned. I don't care who you're on the field with. Also, Christian Kirk adds absolutely no fear to my life whatsoever. Not even a little bit.
I mean, I think the biggest fear is, what is their offense going to look like? Who are they going to hire? What's their offense going to look like? But in terms of those players, I mean, what Brian Thomas did as a rookie, does he become Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson? Like, that's hard to get to. But to think that he's going to regress because those guys were not present, I don't know. I don't think that's true.
And I'll say this, I haven't really dug back into it this year yet. This offseason yet. That's 3 weeks old, so I don't want to beat myself up too bad. But anyway, wide receivers that have scored 16.5 fantasy points in their rookie season, it's a very, very select few that have done that. And the select few that have done it are mostly high-end elite wide receiver ones, like high-end, not just like scraping the bottom, which is still good. Like, just they're absolutely elite players. Obviously, Chase and Jefferson are in that tier, but they're even in a higher tier. So,
So let's get to one more targeted topic, and then we'll close out with some of the comments and questions. Vapad, I do see your comment. We will get to your question. We'll do a rapid fire, maybe the last 7 minutes or so of the show, just to get to those. But which one do you want to pick, Shane? There were a few others that we had in here. I'll just show them to everybody, and then we can kind of stick on the one that looks best. This was mine. Identify demand pockets in the general market and test those against your individual league. So we've kind of already talked about this, but this is more of, are there spots in the consensus like KTC market the social media market, like all the places where you're hearing noise. You're listening to podcasts and you're hearing a prominent content creator say, do this with Jalen McMillan, right? Something like that. And then go figure out quickly if that type of deal will work in your league. It could be a player, it could be a type of trade, etc. But it's just testing that. And sometimes it may work in one league and it may not work in another. And that can be your hedge strategy, right? Like you may only have 40% of your leagues where this type of trade will work. So use that 40% as a place where you can diversify on the 40% side of that bet. Because you can't just assume that all of your leagues are the same. So use that as literally my league tells me what direction I'm going to go with this percentage, because this is the percentage of a leagues that allows me to build the team this way, or undervalues 26 picks or whatever it might be. Use that to shift your strategy instead of trying to force a square peg into a round hole in a league where it doesn't exist. So that's what I want to talk about with that in terms of individual league demand.
No, it's funny because you mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, maybe now, that you've turned back, you've started listening to other fantasy football podcasts again. And much to my own chagrin, because it's the season for it, because I want to pulse on what other people think, I resubscribe to multiple fantasy football podcasts that are not us, that are not in the DD family, because I do want an idea of what other people are thinking. I don't want to call them casuals because they are not that. Anyone that plays Dynasty and does a podcast is certainly not a casual, but I would say they think a lot differently than we do. So I've downloaded and resubscribed to a number of them. Do
you listen to them on Overcast on 3.9 speed like I do?
I do not. But now that you pointed out also about a month ago or a month and a half ago that why I should probably have a Bluetooth speaker, waterproof in my shower, that's increased my listening time.
Dude, we were side topic real quick, but we were running some errands the other day, and you know how when you jump in your car and the Bluetooth switches to your car and it'll pop on, because I always have a podcast in. So it'll pop on, and like if my wife's there and she hears that go on to the 3.8 speed, because I use Overcast on 3 speed, and you can also eliminate the silence and the pauses in the show. So it not only is 3 times faster, but it eliminates all the gaps in between when like I'm talking and you're not, etc. Right.
Yeah.
So you can literally see it, and it's at like 3.8 to 3.9 speed. And I've had like somebody in my car with me, notably my wife, but if there's somebody else there that hears it, like a friend or family member, they're like, how does your brain process that? You know what I mean? Like it literally is like a shock, and I've just gotten used to it. You put it on 1 speed, I'm going mad because it's too slow. It's literally like I almost can't watch back anything, even our own content, on 1 speed. It's got to be at least 2. Otherwise, I can't digest it. So
yeah, anyway. I can get to 1.4, and then after that, it's like I'm not retaining any of this. So
and it's not even, and I think that's the key, is if I really want to retain it, because there are people out there that talk super fast already. So then you get them on one of these shows where it's 3x speed, and it can be rough. But I think for the most part, if I'm listening to another content creator, I don't need to hear every word they're saying. But I do want to pick on like what players are they talking about? You know what I mean? Sometimes I do have to go back a couple times to hear what they said. But I just want to generally get the pulse of the community outside of DD by listening to those topics. So anyway, which one do you want to do? We have 2 of these. The less risky or risky players you can move for close to what you invested. This one.
Yeah, I like that.
Identifying the purpose for a specific player. Maybe we can focus a future episode on specifically that. So let's do this one. Hit on this one. This was your last topic.
So, and the reason this came to mind, I'm working on a Shane Says episode that might not come out this week. Won't come out next week. Probably not for 3 weeks now, even though I put in all the work. So I started looking at second round picks over the last 3 years and who they turned into and how they held their value. And I don't want to give away the soup now because I want you to watch the show whenever it comes out. But what I found was interesting. So for first round picks, I'll just say this, that the value holds better, obviously, because they're first round picks. But if I have a player like, I don't know, Roma Dunze, and I am a little nervous because he scored 7.9 fantasy points per game. And yes, you can throw JSN in my face, but he's
wide receiver 60, Shane. And now he's the next Amon-Ra St. Brown, according to the said podcasts that have come out over the last day. But anyway, continue.
Right. And again, I understand JSN broke the trend, but he was an outlier. I'll put that out there. I'm still not comfortable, or I don't feel great with his future prospects, but also his value is close enough that I can get out for what I paid last year. And this might be a player like, if, I'd rather do that now. And even if I'm wrong, I at least turned it into another first round pick, whether that's a 26 first because you want to hedge a little bit, or you feel a little more confident about this class and you take a 105 or something like that. That's specifically who came to mind for me, Roma Dunze. I'm sure there's other players that, like, if you had a gun in my head, it made me think, but he's the first one that popped in my head like that.
So real quick, just so everybody kind of can put a process to what you're talking about. When you've identified a player like that, how are you going about doing it? Are you just spamming for a first? Are you picking a range of picks you would take? Are you willing to take a future first?
Yeah.
Are you willing to do a leverage deal? Like, how are you picking what you're willing to take back that is considered close to what I invested? Because I think a lot of people will take that and go, well, I drafted him at the 107, so I have to get a pick between the 10, and they may even say, oh, well, this class isn't as good as last year, so I need like the 105 to the 108. Right. And it's like, what if the teams with those picks won't move them? What do you then do?
At 26 first is fine. Josh McAtee, he's in here. We were talking on the voice chat, the Heisman voice chat on the way home, and it was about a different player. But he, for that player who's like, hey, would you take Xavier Worthy and a second? Yeah, I would do that. Like something like that, I would do. Now, I didn't look at KTC value. I don't know who's ranked higher right now. But if a deal like that I could pull off would be something I'd like. Even if it's Xavier Worthy in a future second, even if the first that I get, like we were just saying, is 26, or I really don't want 27. But if it's 27, that's fine. Because at this point, and I'm not saying I'm going to do it in every league, and I do have the benefit of having him in multiple leagues, so I can hedge a little bit. But I do lean, like if I only had him in 2 leagues, I would lean towards liquidating him, moving him, and getting back what I invested in him, just because I did not like what I've seen. Production.
Rome is currently wide receiver 17. I will bet that he will move up to depending on, what happens with the Jets offense.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you saw they hired Aaron Glenn.
Yes.
And the rumored OC is Mike McCarthy, with Aaron Glenn saying he's open to Aaron Rodgers returning. So like that could push a guy like Garrett Wilson down. I mean, if AJ Brown goes out and has 4 targets and the Eagles lose, like I can see Rome jumping into literally the top 15, top 12, because there's legit big people in the space out there saying he could play the Amon-Ra St. Brown role. And it's like, I think it's unfair to put that on a guy that did what he did as a rookie to be a top 12 receiver. But that is the power of having a player that had good pedigree, that was a high draft pick that people loved, and now has a situation that everybody expects to explode. Like, that is definitely one where you might even be able to wait a week or two.
Oh, and
let that simmer. And then you're like, man, I just turned Roma Dunze into Marvin Harrison straight up. Like, it could get there.
And we, at least someone else in here mentioned it. I think I started, but whatever. If I didn't, I don't remember who said it, but patience. You can be a little patient right now. There's not going to be any news that's going to hurt Roma Dunze for the next 2 months, 3 months.
Probably not until
March.
Honestly, no. I think even through the off season, like they're probably going to just build towards the narrative of they're building another Detroit offense, and he benefits regardless of. I mean, sure, they could draft a receiver in the first round and keep Keenan Allen and draft a tight end in the second, and now you're like, okay, it's not going to work. But shy of that, they draft all offensive linemen, you're going to be like, oh, the offense is going to be better. He's going to benefit, I
mean, look, they have Ben Johnson there, so automatically there's a bump.
Correct.
There's an automatic bump because there's a bump for Caleb, which means there's a bump for his weapons. So he could see a rise in value, and he could turn out his second season could be the exact mirror of JSN's, right? But that's why if you are going to move him, one, it's not for a couple months, and two, it's not at a discount. It's for what you paid. If you could somehow squeeze even more out of it, cool. But you got to get back at least what you paid for me.
Yep. All right, 5 minutes left. Let's hit some of these comments in the chat before we go. Let's get Vapads out there. He put this in there right at the beginning of the stream. In the offseason, are you diversifying your portfolio through startups, trades, and existing leagues, or is it on a player-by-player basis? Are there players you're trying to acquire primarily through startups? How do you view this? I tend to do a lot more dispersals and then startups later on in the season. And so I'm not even really looking at it right now as a way to diversify, but to be truthful, when it comes to startup season or even dispersals, which newsflash, we may have a couple of dispersals that we're throwing out there for our leagues that we can put in here for, people if they're interested and for the Discord community. But I will look at my rostership when I'm doing those things, when I'm doing a dispersal, when I'm doing a startup. But it's not something where I'm like, oh man, I really don't want to take another share of this player because I already have too much. Like I know that there's activity that I can easily say, if that's the best pick, I'll go find another place where I can move off of that player or diversify without, I don't let it push my decisions. Does that make sense? Like I will look at it,
exactly,
but I'm not going to let it break a tie necessarily unless it is just a 1-for-1 decision. Like if it's the very last tiebreaker, then sure, but I'm not going to go, this is driving what I do in a specific league or in a startup. How about you?
Right. And I think to my own detriment, sometimes I've been like I said earlier, I've been overly concerned with portfolio. How much do I have of this player instead of, does this actually make sense with the team I'm building?
Me too.
Because if it doesn't, it's really not going to matter because I'm probably going to end up moving that player or some other player that I really like. So I am trying to be, and this is one of the things I promised myself when I'm doing startups, I don't generally look at my rostership. So it's not like I would know it off the top of my head, but I think this off season, I'm going to limit how many times I go and go, how much do I have of this player? You know what I mean? When it comes time to draft, when it comes to trades, like I'm just going to look to make the best deal, period, and not even use that as a tiebreaker. I don't care. Is this a good deal or not? Does this deal make sense? Did I win the deal? Yes. You know what I mean? On its own merits. If I need something to push it over like that, I don't want to do it.
Yeah. And there's been people that have asked me, why are you setting arbitrary percentages on player rostership? And I always used to say like, well, I'm kind of hedging my bets on risk, injury risk, value loss risk, but I couldn't tell you why it's 15% versus 25%. You know what I mean? I can't give you the math as to the theory to why that is. Cause if someone really pressed me on it and they said, well, what is the percentage of the outcome you're scared of or betting on happening versus your rostership? I'd go, actually, I haven't really studied that. So I'm just arbitrarily saying, well, I don't want to have more than 25% of a player.
Right.
And somebody will say, well, why? And it's, well, because, I'm risk that there's something bad's going to happen, but I can always make moves to get out of the 25%. But if it's beneficial to get to 50% because it's a good deal, then I have to be a little more lenient with doing that. So I think arbitrary numbers of I can't have more than this percentage, we usually don't have a reasoning to back that up that's data-based.
Right. And just to Josh's point, Shane, how do you feel about your exploitative players from 2024? It didn't go well. Bob. I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of Kyler, which is really the first and biggest one that comes to mind, is a lot of Kyler. And he didn't have a bad season per se. He just had a season that didn't land where I thought it would be. Vapad was in here just complaining about AJ Brown. I mean, he did what he usually does, 17 points per game. But if you were exploitative on him, you're probably disappointed because to Vapad's points, there was other wide receivers that outscored him. So he ended up, I don't know where he ended the season, but typically he's been like wide receiver 7 or 8, and he was not there this year. I want to get wherever I'm going organically. I'm trying to do that, be more organic. Like that's how it happened. You know what I mean? Not forcing it to happen. Again, I have to have 38% of Puka. Like you said, well, why? I don't know. That's a fun number to have. It just is. And I don't care how I get there. I'm making stupid trades because there's a couple leagues I did that last year where I was like, I don't care. I'll just overpay because I want this guy. Well, then guess what? Playoffs come. I don't have the assets. And maybe I would have moved those assets prior to the season, but it probably would have been for something else that I needed. So, yeah, I just want to be more organic on how I get to where I get. All right.
We got to
get Kevin, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, we'll go for a couple other, 5 more minutes or so.
Yeah.
I would say we will both hit the comments. So if you have an extra comment, leave it in here. We did get some trade questions that don't have formats. Unfortunately, if you don't put the format in there, then it's hard for us to really decipher, how to go about doing that trade. So I'm not going to put those up.
Real quick with the comments, wait till the video posts and then put the comments in there.
Yeah.
We won't see the ones on the side.
But if you have a follow-up, if you have a question that didn't get answered, like put it in there, try to give a little detail, and we'll try to hit them. We'll try to take some time to hit some of the comments. But go ahead and read Kevin's. We'll do a couple more comments before we go, and then we'll talk about what we're going to be doing next week because we're not going to have a standard content lineup on DD.
No, Kevin Borelli. He's on the clock in a dynasty startup and needs a second running back, PPR. Okay, the needs a second running back is all right. Well, we'll just ignore that for a moment. But the available choices are Kamara, Pacheco, Brian Robinson, Tyrone Tracy, and Travis Etienne.
Well, I mean, this is very player takey, but I'm still fine with Etienne. He's gonna get more opportunities because of where he started and what he's done. Kamara, I don't think you can go wrong with Kamara. I mean, he's old. He could expire at any point, but what makes you think he's not going to be what he's been the last 8 years until he's not? I don't know about you, but Pacheco seems like the one on here that I'm not even sure, like, he's a starter. You know what I mean? He hasn't been a starter for a month, 2 months. It's a team that's used a ton of running backs. So that's probably the one that sticks out to me that I'll take some Pacheco at like the Will Levis price. You know what I mean? Not the, I have to pick him in a startup when there's other players like this on the board. I'm fine with the rest. I think my first answer is who's the cheapest one. I want to get a couple of these guys, but I don't want to take them now if I can get another one on the list in 2 rounds. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think you could probably get one of these dudes in 2 rounds. So I'm probably punting right here and just going, I'll grab one of these in 2 rounds. I mean, not to break the news to anyone, we've got a really good running back class coming in. There's going to be a lot of running backs drafted to a lot of NFL football teams, and there's going to be running back production to be had, or at least the specter of production. So I don't feel like,
and you don't need an RB2. You know what you need is like an eclectic mix of a bunch of running backs that could be your RB2 if they get to July, and they potentially could be your RB2, and that could be all 5 of these guys. It could probably be another 20, 30 that are still on the board, and it could be 15 rookies. So if I'm building a team in a startup, I'm kind of looking at not my RB2, but what does my running back room look like behind my anchor? You know what I mean? I want a blend of different layers of bets that could be either won or lost over the next couple months. Pick a couple more. We'll throw them up here. There was a few in here that were probably more like full show topics.
Silvestro, there will be another Shane Says this weekend. I promise you, it will be dropping.
There will be. Okay.
I'll be recording.
I didn't know that, so I was going to save that to the end. But good, you're the king of Shane Says, so good to know.
Recording with Ty, declared tomorrow. Our fun Canadian friend. Let's see here. Sorry, guys. There's so many things.
Now let's just throw this up there. Patience is something I've learned in Dynasty. The best move is just to be patient. Done. Great.
That's the one I was looking at earlier that struck the patience. Like, it's okay to be a little bit patient. Move fast, not quickly. Right? What is the saying? I don't fucking know. Something like that.
I'll hit this one. Ban myself from trading running backs until much closer to the season. We used to think that, but I'm not scared of trading for a running back because they could get replaced. Like, things are a lot more fluid. I'm interested in trading for running backs if it fits my construction. I probably know I need a certain number of running backs in certain ranges to have the running back room that I want for the season. You know what I mean?
Yes.
If there's a good, like Brian Robinson is a perfect one. I don't know why Brian Robinson, but people are convinced, Shane, that they are drafting a 2nd round running back.
Why?
I see constant mocks where they're just replacing Brian Robinson, and they could. But guess what they also could do? Not. You know what I mean? And so he's the one that's being perceived as very risky, whereas there's others that are not in the same boat. So that's the type of player, like if I said he fits what I'm looking for on this roster, how do I get him? Now, do I want to just go pay the 205 to get him? Not necessarily, but if I can get him, that's that. I'm not scared of not buying players because I think they're going to get nuked or replaced or team's going to sign somebody or draft somebody. Like we don't know that. We're terrible at projecting that stuff this far out.
We definitely are. And even if they draft another running back, we don't know that ethers his production. You know, we've seen running backs in committees be what's the word I'm looking for? Fantasy viable. We were talking about on the drive home in Heisman voice chat. Bucky Irving and Rashad White, both of them were fantasy viable. If you had both those dudes on your roster, if you got Rashad White for a random second last year, even though he didn't do what he did the previous year, so you don't love it, but he was still a viable option.
Got to put this one up here. T. Mart in trouble, I think is how I would say that. I was going to say T. Martin, but then there's no I, so I think it's T. Mart in trouble. Longtime listener, recently created an account to chat with you guys. That's pretty cool. Love all your work. Finished my 12th year in a 1 QB start 7 IDP league, Shane. So this is a grinder. 12 years, which is, wow. I mean, I've only been playing Dynasty since 2013, 2014. So literally as long as we've been playing, but in a start 7. Recent revelation for me is that almost more important to know when to let go or trade a player due to injury or unfulfilled potential. Kendre Miller, I'm talking to you. Don't let somebody be a roster clogger and not get anything in return. Yeah, I think, T-Mart, thank you for the comment. That's a slippery slope because I don't even view like Kendre Miller as a roster clogger. He's been a bust and he's been injured, but like he still probably fits a running back on my roster. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I have no expectation. I have no thought that I'll ever even use him, but just understanding like what is and isn't a roster clogger. And in a start 7, he's definitely one. So if you could get like a 4th, I'd rather just have a reroll of any player not named him in a start 7. But you know what I mean? Understanding the threshold of where a player fits. Forget about things with you would analyze each individual player with. Just where do they fit in the general landscape of your league format?
Right.
And roll from there. So one more. I'll let you pick, and then we got to get out of here. I want to make a brief announcement on what the DD content schedule is going to be next week because we will be at the Senior Bowl.
All right. One, if we didn't get to your comment, like Scott said, go ahead and put it in the comments when we're done, and me and Scott both check those. So it helps. It's when I'm on the treadmill or the elliptical. It gives me something to do to kill time because anyway.
It's called Dynasty Efficiency, Shane.
Yeah. Dynasty, listening to podcasts while I'm answering questions and reading articles. Dynasty 12-team super flex. I was offered McCarthy and a Tunze for Jordan Love in a 26-second. Thoughts?
I mean, we don't know any other format, scoring, starters, nothing like that, but I like Jordan Love still. I think he was a major disappointment. I think the way they ran their offense was awful for fantasy. But I think you're getting all the things we talked about with Rome Odunze. You're basically just betting the difference between Love and McCarthy for a free Odunze for a second. You know what I mean? Like I'll take my chances on the quarterback perceived downgrade, or I don't think there's any risk now with McCarthy like there was 3 weeks ago when Sam Darnold was still playing well. So I think I'm easily taking the Odunze side, but it's mostly for the Odunze. I'll eat the quarterback value. I have an asset now that I can probably go get damn near close to an elite receiver for just a quarterback swap. That seems obvious to me.
And if you don't like McCarthy, guess what? A lot of people still do.
Get somebody else.
A lot of people still do. And you know what? Even if I don't like Rome Odunze, guess what? A lot of people still do. I'm not saying I don't like Rome Odunze. Calm down in the comments. I'm just saying if. But like even if I just wanted to go, you know what? All right, sure. Let me make this deal. Then maybe
if this is like Geno Smith, are you doing this deal?
Geno Smith in a second, or
Geno Smith and Odunze for Jordan Love. No. So you're basically paying Odunze for the quarterback upgrade, but you're not getting that second quarterback that has any movement ability. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Like this deal, you could take McCarthy and Odunze and then go, can I get Drake May in something for these two? Because I like Drake May better. And I think he's a better quarterback because he's more mobile or more, he will run.
Yep. Easy B. Thank you for the comment. Shane, we're done. Well, never mind. Shane put another one up there. What you got?
I didn't purposely do this, but now that we did, I guess I can't just ignore it. Y'all answered a similar one in Dynasty Trades and 5 Live, but curious if you would move Jaden Daniels for Knicks and Neighbors, 14-team super flex, start 9. Start 9. He has JD 5 and Lamar.
I think I'm still doing it. Are you?
I mean, Neighbors, 18 points per game as a rookie. Yeah, I think I'm doing this. God, what am I doing in this life, man? Trading for Bo Nix in some of these scenarios. I'm trading for JSN. This is all hurtful. Yeah, I think I'm doing this deal.
If you said I'm not, because Jaden could be the quarterback that literally separates the gap between a streamable receiver starter and Malik Neighbors, like he could be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do understand just keeping in a 14-team or keeping that elite asset. But if you were thinking at all, and this is where like 14 and 16-team leagues get tricky, like that's probably the best 2-for-1 offer you're ever getting for Jaden Daniels. So if you're just saying, no, I need more, really what you're saying is, no, I'm never trading him. You know what I mean? Like that's like the best offer you'll get. So if that's in your inbox, I think you have to, it's really, you're up against the wall. You have to make the decision. Do you want to move Daniels? Do you have a need to move Daniels? If the answer is no, then don't do the deal. But, all right, Shane, we're done. This was a great stream. We always overcommitted to too many topics that we did not get to all of them. I promise we will try to get to them in the comments and definitely on future episodes. But we are going to be in Mobile next week for the Senior Bowl. I'll get to hang out with Shane and Ray and Jay Rich. So there will be some content coming. Don't know exactly what it'll look like. I think we're going to do a couple Senior Bowl only content pieces on the channel. We're definitely going to do a Senior Bowl only mock draft, which, yes, it's only going to be some of the players, but I think that will be interesting to get some discussion going on more players that are not always getting discussed because they're only at the Senior Bowl. So that will be fun to do. And then, some of the regular shows will still come out on the channel, but in terms of Manic and Chill, we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do next week, whether we can live stream. Maybe we just do like a Q&A. I don't know. Yeah. But we'll do some stuff for the Discord and whatnot. But I just don't know about a live show because I'm not super confident that our internet is going to be great for us to do streaming that is quality and not just, too many issues. So That's it. Thank you, everybody. Hit us up in the comments. And if you're in Heisman, if you're already in the Discord, again, if you tag Shane or I or message us, that's where to typically message us like longer questions or ideas for the future streams. But otherwise, hit us in the comments, like and subscribe to the channel. And,
right now, Andre.
Yeah, before you leave.
Look at that question from Andre. I'm not
Is that in Discord?
Yeah, I'm not answering this in YouTube. I'm just telling you that right now. You drop this in YouTube? Nah. But you put this in Discord, I'm going to answer it.
Good stuff.
So, Scott.
Good stuff. Cool. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your Wednesday night. Enjoy the NFC Championship. It'll be fun for me to give Shane and Clay shit during the game in terms of which one's tilting more. It'll probably be Shane. But good luck, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Peace.